And we are back.
And you're listening to the Cosmic Reality Radio Show. Walt's not here today. He apparently lost his power. Bad storms up there. And you're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio. And it's being produced by Haggy Shack Radio, which you can also go to haggyshack.com and you can listen to it over there, too. But donations are always welcome. Nobody gets paid. Just the upkeep of the station. Anything you'd like to talk about here, Miss Kelly, because you seem to be my co-host tonight.
Yes, I do seem to be. Well, now that you threw that out there, I'm like, duh. Mind is rather blank.
Did you have a good 4th? What was the 4th like at your place?
Very loud. I didn't go out until much later. It was after 10 o'clock before I even went outside. Our poor dog was scared to death, hiding under my desk amidst all my cords and wires and such, and feet. But when I did finally go outside, because I had to walk down and get some cigs, it was so smoky, misty out there. At first I'm like, wow, it feels like, or looks like rain or something. But it was just, I don't know, it looked like it'd been a war zone out there with all the smoke from the fireworks, and then it dawned on me that's what there was. And they lasted quite a while, and I mean really big, huge fireworks with, the great big bursts of color and everything going off in the neighborhood, all over the place, all around me.
I thought those things were illegal, but the guy next to me, he must spend $1,000 on these things. And I've got an acre of land, okay, and it's all got trees on it. So he always fires them over my property. They end up blowing up right over the house, so it sounds like it's right outside.
Oh, yeah.
And the poor dog, Cindy was here, and the poor dog, he's very, very concerned. Now normally when he's upset, he runs under the bed. But no, he was sitting beside me, and then it got really loud, and so he moves. And Cindy started laughing. I said, what? And she said, well, he's not a stupid dog. He's moved to the center of the house. And sure enough, he was dead center in the house, just sitting there looking at everybody like, aren't you guys scared?
Yeah. They are supposed to be illegal, but everyone does them, and we have a fireworks factory 2 blocks away. So, I'm not quite sure what all they sell there. I've never been in there, although my kids go there to get their fireworks. But, these things, I mean, it's like a big clap of thunder. And like I say, they go high into the air. They're the same type that the professionals use, the city puts on a big display, several, actually. And they're the same type. So.
It's the same type, but they don't seem to go as high.
Well, I don't know. Maybe that's true. Which, I'm not sure that makes them less dangerous. But I do know that a lot of people go down south and get some of the fireworks that are legal down there and buy them and then bring them back home.
Well, when I was a kid, one of our neighbor kids had a firecracker go off in his hand, and he blew off a couple of fingers.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I've never played with those things. I learned that from this poor kid. Now, he was a bit of a jerk. After he blew its fingers off, it's pretty jerky.
Yeah, well, and we used to do fireworks, when the kids were small and all that, but nothing like they got now. I mean, they're cool to watch if I didn't have to hear the booms, because I jumped sometimes.
It just seems like a lot of money to be doing something like that. Plus the fact that they seem to think that we won something.
Right.
We didn't win much. It's sort of like the British, yeah, we won the war, but then we had the Civil War. Now, see, I look at the Civil War, and I see it very similar to the situation that, the British people would have been in. If the first one that went, which I think, what was it, Georgia? I don't even know, North Carolina, whatever the first state was that left, okay, brought in all those other states after them. They should have been allowed to legally leave. The Constitution said nothing about the states being required to stay with the Union. And right then and there, when the North said, no, we're going to make you stay, and they started this war, it was an illegal, everything the North was doing was illegal.
Mm-hmm.
There was no constitutional support of it. I mean, for all practical purposes, okay, okay, scream at me. Abraham Lincoln was a traitor to the Constitution. He took an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States. Nowhere in it did the federal government have the power to militarily go against a state because the state wanted to leave the Union.
Well, they're continuing that to this day, where they seem to throw away the Constitution over, well, what's better for us and the economy versus the people.
There is no republic. It's a corporation that's in control. But that, the corporation wasn't even in control. The Congress, after the Civil War, in a traitorous act, they had no constitutional right at all. They gave the District of Columbia to the international bankers. In return, they got money to rebuild the country that was, in an absolute, torn apart. So, we have not had a republic since the Civil War. It's been a corporate dictator environment. That they're the ones that are controlling everything. By the Constitution, the federal government is only able to own the District of Columbia. The 10 square miles that comprises the District of Columbia. If they have a war and they capture or they buy some property, then okay, they can do that. But to go into a state and confiscate it as federal property, that's totally against the Constitution. So when Texas, and Fulford mentioned this, that when Texas is talking about leaving the Union, by God, I think that that's absolutely the correct way to go. Because there is no republic. The Union is a corporation. And for a state to stand up and say, look it, this is not what we bought into almost 200 years. Is it 200 years? Yeah, it's over 200 years now. 250 years. What we bought into is no longer what's here. There is no republic. They should be allowed to leave the Union. There's nothing stopping them, by the Constitution. But boy, I'll tell you, that would be an interesting thing to see Texas try to leave the Union.
Well, I know that they had talked about it, was it when Obama was first running or the second time he ran? I can't remember now, but I know that they did talk about it, and several other states have as well. But there's also those on that other side, and probably lawyers, are saying that no, they can't, that once they joined the Union, they cannot leave. That sounds secret society crap to me, but there are those who are saying no, they can't legally do it. So, and it depends too on who's interpreting the law,
Well, absolutely. By the Constitution of the United States that was set up by the winners of the American Revolution is not in effect. All these court systems are actually military or admiralty courts. So they're always going to protect the corporation, state. So there's no way that any lawyer, and most lawyers, that's all they've learned, is the law based on admiralty law, not the law based on common or God's law that says that the human being is the primary sovereign being, not the state, not the corporation. But there is no common law legal system in the United States. It's all this admiralty shit.
Yep.
So
artificial. All of it's artificial.
No, it's like Walt says, why are we trying to change the old reality? Because it's working perfectly well. Well, You can look at it, the situation right now, and you've got the same thing. It's like, no, it works completely well the way that the Admiralty legal system is supporting the state, which is the biggest corporation around. It works completely well, but it's not what we want working. Only, Admiralty law was allowed in the Constitution, but only in regards to, vessels, ships.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of like said, oh, it's a good law to keep everybody, under the thumb, so let's just make it all for everybody.
Well, then they reinterpret what vessels mean, what ships mean, same as they reinterpreted what people mean, because they determined that corporations were people.
Exactly. But, what Fulford says, I gotta read this thing, because this was crazy. Okay, in the United States as well, Caucasian mafia is in deep trouble. The widespread uproar over Hillary and Bill Clinton's activities is the clearest sign of this, as has been widely publicized in multiple media platforms. Now, I did not hear this. If you did, let me know. Bill Clinton basically barged into an airplane where U.S. Attorney General Lynch was and had a 20-minute and Clinton had a 20-minute private talk with her. Needless to say, with his wife the subject of criminal investigation, this meeting was widely lambasted as blatant interference in the legal system. The assumption most people make are that Clinton threatened Lynch on behalf of Hillary. In any case, Lynch later issued a public statement saying she would go along with what FBI career officials decide. These career officials have long made it known that if Hillary was anybody else, she would have gone to jail a long time ago. CIA sources in Washington say the most likely scenario now is for Hillary to be found guilty and then be pardoned by President Obama. Multiple lawsuits about stolen elections are also making it very clear the American people are now in open revolt against brazen election stealing. Pentagon sources are now saying this is part of an open wholesale revolution going on against the tyranny of the Federal Reserve Board. One source says Brexit inspires Texas exodus, and California exit, and then other states will also bail out. There will also be an exit from NATO, the UN and globalist free trade agreements like NAFTA, TPP, and those others. They're all going to be gone. And he's saying there's a complete turnaround in the Middle East where they've got Turkey now joining this, what do they call it? The Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Iran's in it and a bunch of other people. It just is like, if you believe Fulford, he seems to be, pretty on most things. There's revolutions happening all over the place, but it comes down to the basic wake up of, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense, what you're doing here. I think I'll get out, So.
Well, I do think it is a worldwide revolution, if you want to call it actually a revolution, because there's a lot of dissenters out there. And I do think it's worldwide, and I think some of this also is manipulated towards that goal. I think a lot of the stuff that they're doing is to rile the people up. One, they're passing all these laws, taking away rights, and they're doing it illegally over the voices of the other people on the other side of the aisle, knowing full well that in order to reverse these decisions for these laws, you have to go to court, which takes a lot of time because none of this is done quickly and efficiently. And that gives them plenty of time to go ahead and do whatever they want to do. Because even though they reverse it, nobody has to give back. what they've stolen illegally. And if they have to pay a fine, that takes years and years and years, and nobody gets anything from that either. So,
I know when you look at it, it's all really insane. We were talking about a bit ago about how in Iceland they took the bankers who were responsible for screwing up everything and put them in jail. Whereas over here, they would find the corporations that never even slapped the hands of the people that were deceitfully and knowingly and immorally screwing with the finance systems until...
Well, they don't even slap the hands, they give them big bonuses.
I know, it doesn't make any sense.
I know, because you're like, okay, if I'm working in the private sector and I screw up that badly, I'm going to get fired and never, ever given a recommendation again. And yet, they're going like, yeah, they screwed up, but then they turn around, oh, we need your money, or if the banks fail, then the country's going to hell, the world's going to hell, so we give them a whole bunch of money. And then they give the guys that screwed up great big, huge bonuses. And you're like, whoa, wait, I thought you were bankrupt. And the guys that screwed up, you give them gifts? Thanks, dudes. You're like, that doesn't happen in the real world, people.
But that's the thing, is it is the real world. It's like it wasn't so much that the banks were too big to fail. The bankers were too big to punish. It didn't have anything to be, the banks were not too big. I mean, if you look at it, it's like the banks the Federal Reserve, you could pull the plug immediately. All the records that say that I have certain amount of money in a certain place, they're all there. All you have to do is locally take it over and you start up again. It's not a big deal. It was never a big deal. But the friggin' people that were responsible for it are in charge of everything. It's like they got complete command over the cookie jar. So even though you're watching them steal the cookies, you don't have any ability to stop them. You can't vote them out. You can't vote them out because they're bankers. Because they're there because they're illegal, immoral people. Mm-hmm. You can't, if you're smart enough to be a banker, then you're smart enough to know what we know. So I don't want to, have people say, oh, my father ran a bank. Okay? But did my father understand the full implications of what was really happening? No. I doubt it. But if he did, what was he going to do about it? You got to play by the rules. But if somebody walks in and says, do you know that this is all bullshit? All this money is just smoke and mirrors. And who's getting rich off of it are these bankers at the top. Not even the people at the lower echelons. Now my dad's bank happened to be very well run because it was a private bank. It wasn't part of the system. And he was voted in as the president. It wasn't like the presidents lived, it was one of those community kind of things. Worked. But their interface, would he have, I've never had a conversation like this with him. I don't think it would have been possible because I doubt that he would have seen it the way that we see it. So you've got bankers who, they start to see what's really happening. It's, you can't hardly, if you got half a brain, you couldn't have missed the '08 thing. Hell, I didn't know anything about it, and now I understand it. I'm not a banker, but if you look at the data and you just use common sense, you're gonna go, oh, these people were manipulating the money and making a lot of money into their own pockets, and that caused these people who had been given really bad mortgages to go into foreclosure. So they lost their homes, and because of other things slowing down, the recession went into a slide, and the bankers got all the money and all the houses, and does this make any sense? No. Mm-mm. But it wasn't sold to us like that. It was sold to us that there's some crisis. I was so ignorant at that time about all this. And it was like, okay, there's some crisis. What did they do? They had these bad mortgages. What does that mean? It was subprime mortgage. That was it. What the hell is a subprime mortgage?
Well, that they were selling a lot of these as prime. You know, you're not going to lose on this deal. And they knew they were bad.
Well, now I understand it. Now
Yep.
probably everybody understands it. But at the time, who would have even imagined? Who would have imagined that bankers would have been doing this?
Mm-hmm.
It was like Russian roulette.
Yep.
They were gambling. That's all it was gambling.
That's all any of it is, it seems that these days.
And if you look at it as a sane, common sense kind of person, you go, this doesn't even make sense. You know? So, I don't know. I don't know where it's all gonna go. It's just a very peculiar place.
It is. And, you know, there are, prophecies and things that say all institutions will fail, will go down. And, that's churches, religions, banks, governments, corporations, all those sorts of institutions. And it's because they're all so crooked. You know, if it's crooked, it's not going to stand very long. And it seems that many of them have stood a whole lot longer than they needed to, the way it is. And as more and more people wake up, the faster they're going to go down, I think.
What do you suppose is the source of that?
The source of what?
Why that tendency for, you know, you get, I think it's the Peter principle is what I think it is. Because, again, it's organization. If you take a movement and you want to kill it, then just organize it. Like the Tea Party. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tea Party was going gangbusters when it was little groups coming up and, you know, doing their local thing and then getting a little bigger. But by the time they got to a point where they were a national contender, they had organized it. So the next election out, they're a no thing.
Well, infiltrated and then organized, yes.
Yes, but it was the organization, the organizing of them that killed them. Right? Wouldn't you say?
I'm not, well, any time that you organize, it's kind of like union, although I'm not against unions per se. But once it becomes organized, then that means there's somebody doing the organization, the administrative sorts of things, and that leaves them open to corruption. You know, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think that whoever is doing the organization or who is behind it, because often that part of it is done hiddenly, in a hidden manner. So you don't really know who's running the show. And
right, like the EU, the groups that are putting out the regulations. He said that not only do you never they don't have open meetings, but you can't even have access to the papers that are associated with those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
All you get out of them is a regulation. So there's absolutely no control. They said that every single thing that Great Britain had said no to in a parliamentary form ended up, they lost. They have no control.
Mm-hmm.
But why is it, I'm not sure if, to be a politician, to want to go to the, you know, not a local politician, but to be a state and federal politician, that you have to be a certain personality. Because it's like the organization will only work with people that are willing to work with it.
For whatever reason.
For whatever reason. And you've got to, your whole goal has got to be only to get to the position where you can't get any higher. Peter principle. Because you're incompetent at the position that you're at. So, anytime you have a bureaucratic organization, and I mean, if you look around, you see it all the time. You know, you get somebody who's really gung-ho and really good, and you put them in this job and that job. Then you get them to a job and they can't seem to deal with it. It's because that's not who they are. But once they got there, they stay there. They're not fired. They're not demoted. They're not changed. You just stay there. So you have this system that is built to become more and more sluggish, to slow down. It's like, so organizing isn't the answer. So how do you maintain a coordinated kind of like civilization without putting up any organizations and power sources? What would we do? I'm seriously wondering, what would we do? Come on, Holy Spirit.
Well, that is a toughie because, if not, then you got people standing around saying, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? And somebody's got to tell them. You got the people that see the issues, the problems. You got people who can see the solutions. And then you got the people that carry them out. So that is rather a quandary, is what do you do? Because you can wake them all up and people are going to be pissed off and some are going to want to get out the guns and the torches and pitchforks. And that's not the answer either.
I'm going back to when, the Vietnam War protesting. And they killed the students at Kent State, which threw the universities and colleges into total turmoil and uproar and revolution. What happened was at the University of Massachusetts was a group of people who I didn't know any of them. They didn't seem to have any, they may have been leaders of their classes. I don't really know who the heck they were, but they came together. Now it was a crisis situation. Nobody could have foresaw what was going to happen. And yet within 24 hours of these students being murdered by the military forces of the United States, there was such an uproar that they got to the student union, and then there were people who just sort of had an organizational capability that stepped up. And they coordinated everything with Berkeley in California. They had an open telephone communication, and they were able to monitor each college and not each probably, but the vast majority of colleges and universities that were shutting down in protest over these killings. So in a crisis situation, it seems like you do, hey,